right, it's recording on my end too.
Okay.
So, hi, and thank you so much for being willing to have this conversation about our businesses and our processes as heart-centered business women. And yeah, my idea is just that we ask each other some questions and talk about whatever comes up.
Yeah. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, I think it's kind of exciting to be able to do this and see how it goes. Just as you were introducing what we are doing, maybe we should introduce ourselves.
Introduce ourselves. That's a really good way to start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can start. I'm Katie Baptist, and I am a lot of different things, I guess. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and so I've had a private practice in Sacramento for many years. And I've also done some Vision Quest guide work and finding my way into some mentoring. Women's spirituality is a really strong area of focus for me in my work. And I can say much more about that. Yeah, that's me. And how about you?
That's very exciting to me. Well, I'm Holly Holt, and I lead writing groups, and the writing groups are called Word Gathering, and I think they'll still be called Word Gatherings, but under a new umbrella, which is called Deep River Writing, which I'm hoping to expand. I started with just, writing groups actually with adolescents, and then moved on to writing groups with women. And I just know there are so many ways to use writing as a tool for healing and as self-expression. And so we'll see how that goes. We'll talk about that later. And then I'm also a yoga teacher. I teach yoga and more of a restorative, gentle yoga is kind of the direction I'm headed. So that kind of works well, I think, with other things that I do. And the other thing, I am no expert, but it seems to be becoming more of what I do is personality theory, like the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and even the highly sensitive person type of work, because I kind of identify with that. And so I'm bringing that more into my work as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we've talked about a little bit before is how these businesses evolve from the experiences, the aha moments in our own lives, and even the naming of the business for me has been a huge process and has gone through several evolutions.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that for you as you name those pieces about introversion and highly sensitive person. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, I guess, how your personal experiences have affected the type of work that you're doing, that you've chosen.
That naming thing is it's amazingly difficult because, and I know that I'm not the only one, you're not the only one, because I've talked to so many people like, oh, I don't know what to call it. And I've actually, that is something I've helped other people do. I've helped other people name their businesses, name their workshops, their projects, because they don't know what to call them. So from the outside, I can look and talk to them and come up with a name. Right. And they're like, yes, this is what I call it. And I had a friend, she did something for years and I used that name and kept telling people that she named it, Um, but it's harder when it's yourself.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
harder to look at it's hard to see ourselves, because even when we look at ourselves in the mirror, the image is reversed. And so we can't see ourselves
Yeah.
clearly, right?
Right. Right.
Right. So a lot of self-study, a lot of hit and miss kind of things. I mean, I used to be a musician, and I still am a musician, but I'm not actively performing or singing or writing songs at the moment. But I always wanted to come up with a band name. Never really did, you know. The name for the CD, the music, and so taking that into like my own personal history of that, which was, you know, being someone who is highly sensitive, introspective, kind of just a feeler, an intuitive feeler. It was being out in the music world in clubs late at night and coffee houses
Yeah.
was really an experience that has served me, but also, you know, I was exhausted a lot of the time
Yeah.
because of that. But I just had this need and want to express myself. And that's the
Right.
through line, right? So the through line is, and I felt so inspired, and the flow of the creativity at that time was just, the spigot was on, and it just came for 8 years, you know. And then I went through a period where I didn't have that, where it was blocked, and I didn't. I had other things in my life that were priorities, but the creative flow was not, like I had it's almost like I turned off the faucet on purpose. There was like personal stuff that happened in my life that I just thought, I can't do that right now. So coming to the name Deep River Writing was a very long process. I called, and like I said, the word gathering groups, I think, will be called, just so we're gathering to share our words, but it'll be, you know, the Deep River Writing or Deep River Word Gathering.
Yeah.
And for me, and then Liberated Notebooks was another name I used, and that's a cool name. Excuse my cat.
I love them all.
To it. And I thought, well, somebody else might want that name, and they can have that name, you know, because it's a great name,
wow.
right?
So it was like an act of generosity to relinquish the name, kind of?
Right. I mean, I haven't said that out loud, but I feel like I don't need that name anymore. But maybe someone thought, I wish I had that name. Great, take it, you know, if you can. I don't know what happens with these things on social media, but so to me, to get to this point was a very long process of introspection, of really looking at, who am I and what can I offer?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's not my own, it's calling to that part of other people, not it's not all about me, right?
Yes.
It's how can I serve people? And I want people who are willing and able to go deep, and so that they can access that creative flow, that we can access it together. And that's really who I'm looking for to work with, is someone who is able to and wants to slow down enough and pay attention enough to connect in that way, and to write what needs to be written. Yeah.
Well, it's like you, because of your experiences with Deep River Writing, you know some things about it, like about the keys to getting there, the processes to follow. So you can really act as a guide to that territory for people who want to dive into the deep river of what's in there for them to say, but might not know how to start or how to slow down. Really.
Yeah. So it just, I think what I've learned is that entrepreneurial work is deep soul work.
Yeah. Yeah.
People don't think about that when they look at someone who's an entrepreneur, like, oh, they're just doing their thing. There is so much deep work that goes into, and so much
Right.
self-reflection.
Right. That is so true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, whew, if somebody would have told me, I mean, if somebody would have told me, I would have been a business major way back then, when maybe, just because, wow, I didn't know this was another way in.
Sounded dry and boring to be a
Yeah.
business. It did to me. And yet you're right. It is soul work. It is rite of passage work. Yeah. And I think, like, for me, that's how I first came into the work, is desiring a rite of passage for myself, almost as simple as desiring to feel like a grown-up. You know, like being in my 30s and feeling like, oh man, somehow I didn't quite cross this passage. And so when we're talking about naming businesses, my first name was Passageways. And my email is still Passageway, even though that's a kind of business name that got left behind along the way. But I didn't feel like anything had quite named, I guess, named and claimed the transformations that, say, motherhood brought, that, say, yeah, diving into business for yourself brought. So yeah, it started as this rite of passage work that brought me to the idea of each of us carrying our own heart story, that it's like there's this flame almost at the center of our being. I think this calling, where, you know, Howard Thurber talks about where the world's great need meets your own great longing. And so I thought about that as your heart story. And so I named my counseling business, my psychotherapy business, Heart Story Counseling. And that name has kind of traveled with some of the writing workshops that I've offered, some of the Vision Quest kind of programs that I've offered. And still, though, I find myself wondering, what is the name that's wanting to be born now? I confess to purchasing 4 different URLs this past month.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I know about that too. Oh yeah, I have a few others, but I won't mention the names. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that I have a blog that is the Bleeding Key. That's kind of a reference to the story of Bluebeard, if you're familiar with this story of this woman who, she finds out something that she sort of wishes she didn't know. And so sometimes when I think about my own deep writing, it's about, sometimes you find something, an inconvenient truth almost, if you will, that you'd like to shut back down and, oh, I could play small in my life. I don't really need to follow this thread. And yet, like the Bleeding Key in the story, it won't be ignored. So yeah, so I thought I have this kind of Bleeding Key Productions, and I think about doing solo performances or publishing books under that title. There's a lot of different iterations.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're still like in process a bit with some of it.
Totally. So
like you said, the next name, right?
Yeah.
The naming ceremony. The next name.
That's right. Okay, so you talked about the through line when you were talking about your music, your performance as a musician. You said at one point, you said there's the through line. And so I wonder if you can speak to that kind of in all your work. Is there any thread you find you follow? What's the through line?
It does seem like it's such a simple through line in a way. It's a universal to a lot of people, but there's just this through line of finding my authentic voice. And so there's the self-expression piece, there's writing to heal, to understand myself, all of these things. And honestly, as a songwriter, I was doing that as well, even though there is actually criticism about, being too, I don't know what they call it, but basically women's music or women's movies or women's books are too emotional or too this or too that. There's this story that
Right.
that is talking over here that I had to overcome, like that I had to realize, that's not the truth.
Right.
That's just a point of view from a certain segment of society and people who are educated in a certain way or whatever it is, who just have decided that this is art and this is just frivolous, right? And so I think for me, that the through line is really being able to stand in my own truth, right? And now finally, after doing all of my own kind of self-reflection, introspection, and over the past, I would say 10 years, is how do I use that to help other women? For me, it's women.
Yeah.
They are the people I love to help. And I've thought about working with adolescent girls as well. It's just like how to get there and how that would look.
Yeah. Well, I get really excited when you talk about standing in your truth and trusting your authentic voice. I think that totally is my through line as well. Trusting your inner knowing is kind of what it is to me. Trusting your inner knowing and trusting your own goodness in a way, that you have something of value that's unique to all time.
And it's for some reason, it's not something we learn as children or as young people. Well, I mean, I know there's a lot of reasons, but I mean, our culture just does not have things like rites of passage,
right,
or real honoring of the individual and how they can connect to the community in a way. Like there's this rugged individualist, but there's not I think there's a bridge that's missing.
Right, the welcoming back into this community of elders, community who sees you. And, that is missing. And I think one of the things that I hear again and again when I work with my clients around these things is a fear that trusting one's inner knowing is a selfish act. And I think that it's so the opposite, that when we can really stand in self-compassion, that's the beginning of all other kinds of love.
Right. Yeah. But it's a skill, because it's so standing and just really coming from your own authentic place it's a skill, because like you said, it has to start with self-compassion so that you can have compassion for others, instead of saying, well, this is what I think and this is what I want, and then bulldozing through the room. It's I think I'm just wondering, I'm very curious if this is why in my experience, the women that I tend to work with are in midlife or a little like on the cusp of it. Because maybe it takes us this long.
takes a while because we have to really learn to listen to our own voice over the cacophony of other voices around us, right?
Right. And as a therapist, I'm thinking, I mean, you know, about probably breaking the family barrier or family, you know, kind of history and
Right.
all of that, right? To get to
Totally.
yourself.
Totally. And so much of the time, one of the things I do when I work with people is break down the different parts, the different voices. Whose voice really is that right now? Because you're right. So much of the time, even after that parental voice or a critic that may have even been, you know, well intended, the third grade teacher who, you know, criticized your singing or your writing, that voice goes on and on and on in our minds. And so I think it can take a lot of self-compassion practice to be able to come to and acknowledge, okay, those voices are still there. Hello, third grade teacher, you're still there. But that's not the voice that serves me for the calling that I have. And yeah, and I'm not going to let it stop me anymore.
A lot of work. It's big work.
Yeah, it takes time.
And there's different avenues to it. And I think that's part of, that's why I love to talk to you, because I think that we have this really common bond of that understanding, but we come at it from different ways. You know, you come at it as a therapist, but also these, I'm thinking outdoor adventure. That's not what it's called, but you know, where you take people on these.
The outdoor Rite of Passage
programs. Right. And we both come at it through the writing. The yoga is another way, meditation. I mean, there's so many different ways to find out who we are. There's
so much about embodiment. I think we share that in common too. One of the things I've spent the last year really in a deep dive with is sexuality and sovereignty, and how we need to come to this place of self-love and self-belonging in our sexuality as well. And I love that you do the yoga work, because sometimes it is so much about just grounding in the body.
Yeah. And then to take it that step further and to really own our sexuality, our sexual being, which is also something that many of us are taught to, like, the body is over, you know, is kind of over here and our head is over there.
Right. And never the two shall meet.
Right. And like these awakening moments that I had in yoga or in dance or other forms of movement and practices, breathing, you know, whatever. Yeah. So I love to, you know, when I heard that you were doing that, I thought that's so needed, so needed.
Yeah. The thing is, I think that there's like a deep ethics in listening to the body and listening to feelings even. And I don't think we're taught that. We're taught the opposite of that, that it's dangerous to listen to desire, or, you know, to listen to the ways our body says yes, the ways our body says no.
I know.
But
especially how our body says no sometimes, like, let's pay attention to that.
Yes.
Maybe I will turn left instead of right because my body's telling me not to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, from my experience with my yoga study, the Enneagram also there's an embodiment practice. So it's like the feelings are contained in the body. We get the sensation, then the feelings come, and then we think about it.
Yeah.
So it's like the last thing.
Right.
But we're taught, think about it first.
Right. And so there's a wholeness of of allowing all those ways of knowing to be guides. So on that note, I was wondering if you wanted to talk about being a heart-centered businesswoman who's also an introvert, and it sounds like a highly sensitive person maybe. And what are the ways that you find to protect your energy and to just set boundaries maybe? Because you amaze me. I see your newsletters and your offerings. I think you're putting out such amazing things. So what do you do? How do you take care of yourself?
Well, I always think if people only knew about how boring my life was, it's way, way more boring than it used to be, because I was kind of activated a lot as a younger person, and as a musician, as a, working at a job, at an office, at a school office. It was fantastic, that connection to the community, wouldn't trade it, and completely exhausted. And I couldn't even, the whole idea of self-care, I couldn't get there because I was too tired to even take care of myself. So I've learned over time. What do? I meditate every morning. I do miss a morning now and then. Let's be real. I try to take walks outside, not with a big group of people, with maybe one other person or by myself.
Yeah.
I have so much quiet time in my life, and that could change. And now that I have the resources, I know I could do that. Restorative yoga, which is, basically lying down in a shape with some pillows for 10 or 15 minutes.
That sounds wonderful.
It is really, because when we allow it's kind of a metaphor. It's like when we allow ourselves to be supported, when we allow ourselves to receive support, and that happens to be with blankets and pillows. Oh, the elbow feels weird. Let's put a pillow under it. Oh, that feels better. Also something we're not taught. So that I learned, it's kind of the big self-compassion practice, right? The restorative yoga. I can do one pose for 10 minutes and just like, oh, okay. I'm feeling like I can keep going. I just have so much quiet time. I mean, we have 3 cats now. So animals are helpful. No animals is also really helpful. So I don't, of course, this quarantine time has made it even more like, I have many introverts in my writing groups, and the comment was, we can't wait to be alone by choice again.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a different energy. I love working in a busy coffee shop, but no one bothering me. But I have that, like the energy of other people, without interacting with them directly. Right. It's such an introvert thing to do, but I love that, because being alone is isolating. It can be.
Yeah. Well, I find that's part of the magic of having experienced your word gathering groups. That's part of the magic of that is, you have those 15 or 25 minutes or whatever it is, uninterrupted writing time. And yet the energy is held by the circle because everybody's doing it together.
Yeah. Really, and I have to say, studying 2 things. Studying about introversion, that book Quiet by Susan Cain, highly recommend to anyone who is thinking I'm a weirdo because I want to be alone. Great book. The Highly Sensitive Person. INFP or, Myers-Briggs, I am an INFP. So it's just like one more layer of that. Learning all these kind of personality things, which seem, again, in certain circles to be just like, ugh, hokum. It's been helpful to me to understand that,
right.
that there's nothing wrong with me. And so that is a self-compassion. And then also I have to say that I was so surprised about how Zoom class, I wouldn't call them classes, groups, have felt so intimate, the writing groups. Once we got the technology kind of figured out. And so I want to in the future have both and in-person experiences that maybe are a little bit longer instead of maybe a weekly group in person. That's my thought. We'll see.
Love that.
Everything's a we'll see. But the Zoom experience, because we're right, it's so intimate. And when we're in our own room writing, but we know there's someone there, and then we come back there, it's kind of a introvert's paradise.
Love it. I love it. It actually reminds me a little bit of the Rite of Passage time on the land, because when you spend time solo, but you know that there are other people sitting there grappling with their own inner stories, claiming their own new ways of being, and they're there on the land too, and they're all going to come back together with you and recognize and witness each other. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I know. I'm so that I'd love to know. I mean, it sounds like from what you said that finding that work was because of your own longing for that in your own life.
Yeah, totally. It was a series of discoveries that brought me to that work, and it did start with birth and acknowledging giving birth as a rite of passage rather than just a medical event. And so birthing from within, and Pam England, who first conceived of it, I really owe a huge debt of gratitude to them, because birthing from within introduced me to new ideas like mindfulness, like that there are different parts of us that are all talking together, and this concept that we can choose the voice of love. We can choose at any moment to listen to the voice of love. So then after I got done with the whole childbirth thing, I started wondering, well, what else is there around rite of passage, around I mean, I gotta say that religion and spirituality have been huge parts of my journey. Because when I went back to school for a women's spirituality degree, it was really because I was trying to reinvent belief and, find my way to something that felt aligned with my integrity. And so finding rite of passage work was one of the amazing parts of that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear more about, because I've seen you more online, and particularly around the women's spirituality work. And so I'd love to know, what kind of projects are you working on? What are you thinking about? What might this come together for you? Do you know?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Yes, because talking about spirituality is something that as a psychotherapist, I think that I've been pretty cautious and wanted to not approach directly in most cases, unless it's something that my clients directly brought and it was their focus. And yet the concept, the idea that sensuality, that pleasure, that being embodied is a way of being spiritual is so exciting to me and so different from the way I was raised, to the early messages that I got about how sensuality and spirituality were not really the same thing at all. And so as I've really started to come out more about that work recently on Facebook, I'm getting set to offer some mentoring just to help other women. And I think you're right, it's for me as well, it's probably women at midlife. Really develop some skills around claiming what are my beliefs? What is my spiritual truth? And I think that could be women who are part of religious communities. It could be women who are not. It could be women who've never been, or it could be women like me who used to really love the home and community of spirituality and then felt kind of exiled because they're some of the really core things about being woman and being in a body didn't align with the religion that they came up in. So I want to have those conversations a lot more with people, and I want to offer some skills, some tools.
Have you determined, and you might not, it still might be in the works, but what would be your desire to work more one-on-one or in small groups, or do you like both?
I love both, and I think that initially it's going to be one-on-one. For one reason is that's a little easier when you're first starting out, because there's not maybe a whole group of people who know about you yet. But yet there might be one person who's listening and who goes, this sounds like exactly what I need. And I do think that now in America is actually a really important time to be talking about religion, to be talking about spirituality and belief. So yeah, I think that initially working with individuals, some one-on-one mentoring. I also have some workbooks that I've been creating with activities that I'm pretty excited about. My daughter has been helping me with some design elements. She's made the most beautiful workbook.
Oh, those kids.
Yeah. Incredible. She's also doing that with my home, kind of. I know just the perfect color of paint for this wall, Mom.
Oh, that's great. That's me. So I need it. And like this room, I'm going to paint it a different color, but yeah, that's great. To have some collaboration, right, with the younger generation.
Yeah. I don't know if you got a chance to see, but she and I actually taught an online workshop a couple weeks ago.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I led a workshop called The Power of And, because I think that we get into binary thinking of either or. It's not that helpful so much of the time. And so I wanted, right, so much so now. So I wanted to tell my audience about the power of and my daughter agreed to sit down and have that conversation with me. And it was really fun.
I didn't know she was involved. Oh, that's great.
It was really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, my son, he's doing his own thing, but we have sort of little mini mastermind meetings a lot in the house because,
Oh,
he's a creative and he's
he's done
creating.
some YouTube stuff, right?
Yeah, he's making educational videos about all kinds of things on YouTube. And
Cool.
so we talk about this idea of putting our work out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I still haven't gotten him on board to help me with art, even though he's an artist, but we'll see.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, he's doing his own thing.
One thing that I'd love to ask you about is, and I know, let's see, we probably have, what do you think? 5 or 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to ask you what advice you give to writers about writing for themselves versus writing to the audience. It feels like that's relevant to a lot of what we're talking about here.
I'm just gonna go with what's coming to me.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I say forget the audience. At first. Especially now, it kind of depends on where you are on your writing journey. But if you are one of those people say, I've wanted to write, and I used to write when I was young, but I haven't done it in years, and I kind of want to do it again, but it makes me nervous because it's a very vulnerable thing sometimes. Writing for yourself is so it's needed, I think. Journaling, I mean, anything that's that is kind of like the morning pages or anything like that, it can be really helpful to get sort of kind of through some of the self-talk, right? I feel like that like needs to be cleaned out a little bit, especially if we're just starting. But then if someone's been writing for a while, I still say first draft, to let the words come.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. I think that's one of the hardest things, is because the inner editor comes in and is working immediately to change things in the moment. And then it makes it choppy. It makes it hard. So I would say, even if it's 5 minutes, let yourself write freely.
Mm-hmm.
And let yourself write freely and do it. I actually don't believe that writers have to write every day for a certain amount of time at a certain place and a certain time of day or whatever. I mean, you can do that. And if that works for you, great. But at least once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, sitting down and having that practice of allowing yourself to write. And if that doesn't come naturally, doing it on your own, it's too hard, find a group. Or find an accountability circle. I mean, that's one thing I've offered in the past, and it really hasn't taken off, but I really believe it's something that people want, is we meet online for an hour or an hour and a half, and we write for an hour quietly. We don't talk to each other, but then we know that someone's there. You can do it in person too, but it's kind of nice to do in your own house. Or to have, that is something that can be really helpful. The writing group, people say, I need to practice. I said, come to my writing group. You have to write to a prompt for 15 or 25 minutes. You don't have to share.
Yeah.
You don't have to share what you just wrote, but let yourself do it and get into the rhythm of making it part of your life.
There's a magic to that. I mean, I have to say that the writing that I did while sitting down in your word gathering circles has a different quality than sometimes than the writing that I just sit down and by myself and don't have that same focused energy around.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much wrote my whole entire novel in writing group.
That's amazing.
Right. In 500 word snippets.
Yeah.
And, eventually I went, okay, I got inspired enough to do some on my own, but I would say at least 85% written in writing group, my own writing group or someone else's. So it can be done. You can write a whole book.
Yes, it's true. It's true. Yeah. You know what? I think one of the biggest reasons that I'm in transition right now is that I finally wrote my book. This memoir that the last decade has had me obsessed with. I finally finished it. I haven't published it anywhere, and I likely never will. And yet there's a freedom somehow. I don't feel caught by that story in the way that I used to. And I feel like it's been a creative composting in a way. I think there's stories in it that I'm actually excited now to find ways to share. I'm looking at, I don't know, maybe publishing essays, personal essays here and there or something.
When I heard, when you shared that, I thought, this is it. This is what I mean, is that story, whatever that story is, because we all have that story.
Yeah.
We all have, maybe we have several, but we have at least one that, like you said, holds us captive.
Yeah.
And it can be a lifetime. I mean, Pat Schneider, who created Amherst Writers and Artists, talks about that in her, I think both of her beautiful books about writing alone and with others is one of them, about why do we keep writing about that damn hallway? What is it about that hallway?
Yeah.
And and writing about these incidents and writing about these experiences or the feeling, and we just, if we never publish one word, the writing of it, I can see the transition in you from, I finished this and now I can do this other thing. And now I feel like I've had those experiences too. I wrote that story enough so I could move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. There's magic there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that we're running short on time, but do you want to, I would love to know if you have any advice for women who are kind of on that spiritual search, wanting to be more embodied. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it starts with taking some time, setting some time aside for tuning in. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, which is like, I love, adore that book. She talks about how each woman has a different set of nurturances, things that are the care and feeding of that woman. For some women, it's painting, or it's hiking and getting as close to the spray of a waterfall that's safe. Or for some of us, it's writing, or just really being present with an animal. And so I think it starts with making space to see what it is for you. And sometimes you have to follow a few different paths before you find the few that really speak to your soul.
Yeah.
And then, letting yourself be present to those. I think that's how it starts. And it's, I have a new page on Facebook that's Katie Baptist, MA, Women's Spirituality, and I'm going to be opening up a Facebook group pretty soon too, so that there's more of a place for discussion around some of these things, because I'd really like to, more than whatever may happen with the business side of it, I'd really love to engage these conversations with more and more women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what it is for me, but tuning into ourselves and then tuning into one another.
So it's say the name again of your page.
The page is my name, Katie Baptist, MA, which is because I'm also an LCSW in my psychotherapy practice, but I put my MA for my master's in women's spirituality because I really clearly wanted to say this is a different hat I'm wearing here. So it's Katie Baptist, MA, women's spirituality.
Great.
Yeah. Do you have any parting messages before we end here? Places you want to send people?
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all. This has been really a great conversation. If people want to find out more about what I'm doing or kind of ask questions, I'm doing two things right now. My website is hollyholt.com. And it's being totally redone, but there's, there'll be things on there, at least. So if you're interested in the writing groups and that kind of thing, but also people can reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook at either Holly Holt Writes or Deep River Writing, because the one thing I am doing is I'm interviewing women writers, women who write or want to write, who consider themselves sort of that introspective, sensitive, slightly unconventional person who where writing has really been a part of their life, and they want it to be a part again, or they want it to be a deeper part of their life. And I'd love to have those conversations. So people could just DM me on Instagram or Facebook. I would love that. To do that. I don't really have I'm not putting it on my website or anything. It's sort of a secret.
Okay, cool.
It's not a secret, but
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing the secret with us here.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for asking.
It's been so good to talk with you today, Holly. Thank you so much for taking the time for this.